Hey everybody, welcome back from spring break. Hopefully you had an awesome week. It is certainly very inspiring outside to feel the warmer weather, to see the flowers start to come up. I am super excited. Spring is here and I couldn't be more excited because that means warmer weather here in Michigan. So let's dive in to Module 6. But first, a couple of housekeeping notes. We have Module 6, which is starting right now and will run for the next 2 weeks. Then we will have Module 7, which will also run for 2 weeks. And then we'll move into our final project. Our final is a project for this course. So there's a lot of different action steps where we're going to combine a lot of the different components that we've studied throughout the course of this semester. So I will actually be publishing that in the beginning of April. So you'll have plenty of time to work on it. It's not going to be something that you're going to have to cram into the last week or in a specific day or meet here at a specific time. It's a project, and I expect you to be able to work on that little by little over the course of the last couple weeks of our class. So it's nothing to be intimidated by. It's just got a lot of different components from our course, and it's actually really fun. I've done it the last few semesters, and everybody has had a blast with it. It really is a great way to tie in, again, like I said, all the different elements of what we learned here in sport communication, which is applicable in any field that you're going to go into. And the great thing about the final project is you get to pick the topic. I'm going to lay the groundwork, and then you get to pick the topic and use that as your foundation to build your entire project around. So whatever you're interested in, whatever field you're interested in going in, you're going to love the final project for that reason. So before we can get to that though, we have to get through Module 6 and 7. So let's talk about Module 6. In this module, we'll be primarily discussing the media and how the media how the media in a sport entity is used to advance let's start that over. This module primarily focuses on using the media to a sport entity's advantage and implementing strategies to advance public relations. There we go. I got it out. So primarily we will start off by discussing public relations, but really we're going to discuss the 3 relations of communication. So I'll get to that in a second. But first, from persuading the public and managing the media to interacting with community and training for interviews, public relations professionals play an important role in communicating and sport entities' message. It's key to its constituents, especially when it wants to influence public opinion. To maintain a positive organizational image and communicate effectively, communication professionals must understand organizations' key publics, and we'll define that term because I know we've discussed it a few different times in this module. They must understand key publics, develop appropriate messages, and deliver them in a way that is effective for each of the identified publics. So what are those 3 relations that I just mentioned? We're going to discuss public relations, media relations, and community relations. So the first thing, public relations, it isn't easy to define. In 2012, the Public Relations Society of America, or PRSA, accepted thousands of submissions before it finally agreed on one definition of public relations. So if you've conducted your own research, if you've been in other courses, public relations might have been communicated to you in a slightly different way. That's okay. Public relations is difficult to define. For this course, we're going to base our understanding off of the Public Relations Society of America, PRSA. Which is the governing body of what some of you might be familiar with, which is PRSSA, which is the Public Relations Student Society of America. If you are a public relations major or want to learn more about public relations, there are student chapters almost at every university across the country. On one of the pages within the module, I do link to our Wayne State chapter. So it's a great place to explore, to learn more about public relations, perhaps even join that student organization. So back on track. So for our course, we are going to use that definition defined by the Public Relations Society of America. And that definition is: public relations is a strategic communication process that builds mutually beneficial relationships between organizations and their publics. I to read that off to make sure that it was correct. So that's the definition we'll use when we are studying sport communication through the lens of public relations. So there are a few different areas that we'll study specifically: the historical perspective and trends in public relations, effective public relations, including the 4 modules or the 4 models of public relations. And many of you might ask when we get to that point in the module, is public relations advertising? And the answer to that is no. In this crazy world of communication, there are several different methods that are often used. There is unpaid and paid advertising, followed by earned and purchased advertising or media, both resulting in credible versus skeptical. And that is a result of the consumer. So have you ever seen an advertisement that is sponsored? Or a post on social media that is sponsored or suggested? I know I see it all the time on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. It is sponsored and it'll say it. That's now a law that it has to say that it's sponsored or it's promoted or it's suggested, whatever the term, depending on the platform that you're using, prefers to use, that actually has to be defined now. So when that happens, sometimes information can come to you and you're a little bit skeptical of it. Or when the information comes from a reliable source with long-standing credibility, that helps and increase trust as the consumer. So there is this old age saying, advertising is what you pay for, publicity is what you pray for. So one thing you can count on, you can pay for it, and the other, you just have to hope that it happens, but there's no guarantee. So advertising is paid media and public relations is earned media. It is something that you earn over time based on relationships that you have built with the media, hence public relations. It is earned media, that partnership, that relationship over the years will help your team, your business, your organization receive a favorable response in the media when journalists are discussing your business, your company, or your organization. So after we discuss media relations, we'll take a slight detour to discuss the element of persuasion. And to truly influence the public's perception, sport entities must understand the fundamental elements involved in persuasion and use them in conjunction with the 4 models of public relations. So we study the 4 models in the first chapter or the first page on public relations, and then we move into the art of persuasion and how you can use those 4 models from public relations to influence the public's perception of your organization. And persuasion is defined as getting another person to do something through advice or reasoning. And to persuade individuals, organizations must give them advice that coincides with their existing beliefs, emotions, and expectations. And some effective methods by which to persuade individuals include presenting them with facts and figures, appealing to their emotions, personalizing the information they receive, and focusing on their specific needs. So those are all different methods by which you can persuade an individual. We'll take a look at those a bit further, along with the factors that influence perception and the 5 motivations that drive sport consumers. And motives are important in shaping people's perceptions and should be considered carefully by sport public relations professionals as they work to shape the opinions of sport publics, aka sport communication. So that's why we're discussing persuasion in this particular module. So then we'll get back on track in our relations discussion and we'll move into the second relation. And that relation is media relations. And media relations can be described as a company's interaction with editors, reporters, and journalists. So that's that relationship part that I've already mentioned. And the goal is to communicate an organization, business, or a client, depending on what industry you're in, their newsworthy message, their story, and the information that they have, and make sure that it is being shared to appropriate media outlets. So how do you do that? Well, we'll take a look at the strategies for developing positive media relations, including the 3 core styles of media relations, being reactive, proactive, and interactive. And then we'll look at understanding the journalistic environment to better foster relationships with the media. We'll anticipate contact from the media, how to anticipate contact from the media, actually, the tools for maintaining contact, including how to write, develop, and distribute a press release. And we'll also study the proper procedures for a sport press conference, how to develop media kits and media guides, fact sheets, and how to prepare for interviews. All of those are part of media relations, so we'll take a look at each of those different areas. That leads us to our last relation of this module, and that is community relations. And the most often overlooked area of sport public relations is the community relations section, which helps a sport-focused organization cultivate mutually beneficial relationships with key constituents and audiences in the community. What are constituents? What are audiences? What are publics? Really, those are all just fancy terms for the community, your season ticket holders, your customers, your investors, the people who live around your organization. That's a key public. That's a constituent. That's your audience. The audience is obviously the people that you're trying to sell your product to or get your message out to. So those are all just really fancy professional words, but we'll take a look at how all of those different publics, constituents, and audiences fit into the world of community relations, because community relations can be defined as an organizational activities designed to foster desirable relationships between a sport organization and the communities in which it's either located or has strategic interests. So you have probably seen a variety of different sport communications, community relations efforts right here within our own community. We have several professional sports teams that are very active within our community, and we're very beneficial to have so much of their interest and so much of their energy and so much of their heart poured into our local communities here. In addition to that, Wayne State University, our university, does so much in the world of community relations. You don't have to be in sport to have an invested interest in community relations. All different sorts of businesses, organizations want to invest in their community, want to invest in a variety of their different demographics and segments of their community. So that's what community relations is. We'll take a look at that. We'll take a look at some of the examples of some of our pro teams and what they're doing. And that is just a small example of what organizations, teams, and businesses are doing. We've already studied a few throughout this course. I don't know if you've picked up on that, but we have. And then we'll just take a smaller snapshot of it. There are so many different examples. We could spend the entire module studying the examples of community relations. So I've just outlined a few that I feel like we can all relate to, we can all resonate with in this course. So overall, community relations is a vital part of an organization. So we'll take a look at that before we move into our last topic, which is crisis management. So crisis management is something that needs to be addressed, because PR isn't just for positive storytelling. It's also to mitigate any damage that can weaken an organization, business, or a client's perception of your organization. So daily headlines are filled with companies, organizations, and institutions or teams that are dealing with a crisis. And crisis management is the process by which a business or organization deals with the sudden emergency situation. The severity of a crisis can vary and include a variety of different topics. Some examples in sport crisis: a building fire, severe weather or a natural disaster. A league or a conference has specific violations. There's cheating, rigging a game or tournaments, tampering with equipment, theft or fraud by either parents, coaches, athletes, or employees. There's allegations of misconduct by coaches, athletes, or employees. A player, coach, or an employee there's a death or there are severe injuries. Challenges between parents, fans, coaches, administrators, and referees. The NCAA obviously is the overarching organization that deals with that in terms of the college athletics world, but there's not really a guidebook or a overarching organization that can help teams, businesses, or organizations when it comes to any other field of sport. So there are some examples that I've outlined specific to the NCAA to see how some of those crises have been managed. And there's no easy way to manage a crisis, but there are steps that you can take to help your organization through that process. I mentioned earlier an example of a crisis is a fire, severe weather, or a natural disaster. I know down in Texas, there are tons and tons of homes and businesses that have had significant damage. There is a NCAA team that I just heard as I was watching the tournament yesterday that they had to practice at a different court. The half of their season they had to finish, the second half of their season they had to finish at a neutral site because their court had so much water damage from busted pipes that had frozen and then thawed and ruined their court. That constitutes a crisis. How do you manage all of that? And nobody is prepared unless you prepare for it. So what do I mean by that? PR professionals are skilled at handling a wide variety, both the good and the bad. And there is a plan in place, or there should be a plan in place that helps organizations and businesses take a detailed course of action. And that is described through a lot of different ways. So a plan that is prepared by supervisors or members of the management team that can be distributed to all of the employees of an organization and help an organization overcome that crisis. And there are several different ways that you can do this. I have a lot of examples included on that page. There's lots of extra links. So feel free to click on a lot of those things. The only required reading is going to be listed at the bottom, but there's a lot of links in there just to help you better understand, because you can never be over prepared for an organization or for a crisis. So with that being said, after we get through crisis management, we will be at the end of our module. There is a case study at the end of the module that we will use in the form of a discussion post. So you'll need to participate in this case study along with a few other sections that I've outlined. So there's technically 3 sections of the discussion. You will participate in all that before you can see your classmates' comments. So don't be alarmed if you can't see anything yet. You need to submit your response before you can see what your classmates say. But don't forget, you have to comment on your classmates' posts. We are a sport communication class. We can't meet in person, and these discussions are helping us to get new perspectives, get new ideas, understand something that we might not understand ourselves. So don't forget to comment on your classmates' posts. Once you've done that, you're at the end of the module. As always, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to reach out. I'm here to help you be successful and answer any questions that you have. So without further ado, I will let you jump into this module. Let me know if you need anything. Otherwise, good luck, and I'll see you at the end.